Special Operations, Covert Ops, Espionage, The Team House, with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 160 of The Team House. I'm Jack Murphy, joining you from our studio in Brooklyn. Over in Area 51, David is joining us remotely, where they are studying him for medical science for the good of society. Down below, Pirates of the Caribbean, you can see our guest tonight, Ryan English. Ryan is a former Marine sniper. He served as an assistant team leader in a long-range reconnaissance unit in the Army. And today he works as a cybersecurity expert as well as a marksmanship instructor. So, Ryan, thank you very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you guys for asking. As you guys made it sound like I have a much busier schedule than I do, but I'm really happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. So you know what the first question I'm going to ask you on the show is about your origin story, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about how you grew up. Oh, I forgot to mention that you were also a private security contractor with Triple Canopy. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first, we'd like to hear a little bit about your upbringing and kind of that path that took you towards the Marine Corps.
Oh, well, I didn't know we're going that far back. Cool.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, all right.
Ancient history,
cheers.
Man.
Ancient history. Every male in my family going back was in the military. I'm sure it's a common thread every time you guys bring somebody on. Either that or it's like the judge told me. But no, my grandparents, World War II, I was in the basement one day as a kid. I found my father's Green Beret, and I don't think he really wanted me to, but it went from there to like, I knew as a kid that I was going to be a Marine. Like, I don't know how or why, but I know it was something I knew before I was even a teenager. Maybe, right around that time. And like, I did the delayed entry program, man. They had me. I'll tell you a funny story though. I walked into the recruiter's office. Staff Sergeant Roos was his name, in Atlanta, Georgia. Me and my buddy David Coley, great dude, walk in there and he's eating a sandwich. We go, "Hey, listen, I want to be an 0311, and there's nothing else that you can tell me that I want to be interested in. That's what I'm going to do. So me and my pal right here, that's what we want. So don't try to sell us on anything else." And this guy, I swear to, he's holding his sandwich up and he looks at us. And I remember him putting it on his desk. He had a newspaper, right? And he puts it on the newspaper on his desk. And he looks up at us and he's like, "Boys, I can see that you gentlemen know exactly what it is that you need to do. And so listen, I'm going to pull some strings and I'm going to get you guys where you need to go. I'll get you sorted out. But listen, you're going to have to start like pretty much right now in this delayed entry program here. I'm going to have to get you to sign this. How old are you guys? All right. Come back when you're 17. So 17, man, like right after my birthday, 1 year out, signed delayed entry program. This guy just looking at us like, "I made it work for you. I did it. I got you what you needed. Now you owe me something. You better be here every weekend." That guy must have been laughing so hard, man.
This is like the first success story that we've ever had on of somebody successfully, like, getting what they wanted out of their recruiter, getting one over.
It's funny because the irony is that the Army recruiter was actually a much cooler dude, and he took me and my buddy Dave up to Dahlonega, and we got to watch guys going through, because we're in Atlanta, it's a short drive. And his buddy was like, the thing that killed it for me was his buddy goes, he's talking to his friend who was an RI, and I could hear them talking to each other about like, "Hey, what's your next move in your career?" kind of a conversation, while me and Dave are like watching guys rappel off that big rock and everything. And he's like, "Yeah, man, put in my package for SF, man. I'm gone, dude. I'm going to go SF." and when we got back to Atlanta, I go to the recruiter. I go, "Well, hey, so, I want to know about SF." He goes, "Oh, son, you got to be an E5 before you can even put your paperwork in for that." And this is like 1990. And I'm like, hell no, man. Not waiting around that long. There's no possibility that could happen. And I was like, I knew it. We were supposed to be Marines. That's what I need to be. I'm going back over to that guy's office. And yeah. And little did I know, if I'd have waited 15 years, I could have just jumped right through on the X-ray program right up the street. Just would have been amazing. Just hang out and wait.
Yeah, you could have gone and been a communist at college for 15 years and then signed up, and you would have been good to go.
I would have. That's true. I could have done that. I could have also been an infiltrator within the communists in college, though. You don't know. I could have been prepping myself. I would have been the G chief. I have that skill set without knowing.
So you duly entered the Marine Corps as a willing candidate, and and as an infantry Marine.
Yeah.
And you spent a lot of time in this was, you said 1990, so you spent a lot of time out at Fleet, right?
Yeah, I mean, I actually I got to boot camp the day of my birthday, like the morning of my 18th birthday. I'm on the yellow footprints, getting screamed at, and it was, I mean, you knew what it was going to be about. So it was, in a way, it was like, it's intimidating for a kid, but it's fun. So then I got to the Fleet. All these guys had just come home from the first Gulf War, and I'm talking a couple of weeks before, because 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines got diverted on the way back from the Gulf War to do that humanitarian thing in like Bangladesh. There had been a tidal wave or some kind of horrible thing, and all these people got washed, and like 3-5 on the boats came back and like helped them out, so that they were like the last Marines to get to the States. They had, like, the war had been over like 7 months prior, and these guys are showing up now at Pendleton, and there's all these little kids there with their alphas in their paperwork in hand, and we're all just like, where? And that was the day I pulled my first hoodwink in the Marine Corps and got into snipers before, because to get into snipers in the Marine Corps, you usually have to get into your Fleet unit. You get into the infantry for a little while, and you get some seasoning, a little salt, and you get, maybe if you're lucky, you get to go to a stay platoon indoc. Stay platoon was running an indoc like that week, and I watched a buddy of mine do some horrible, egregiously wrong thing, which was simply when he met his squad leader, who was just sitting out in front of the battalion barking out names, and this kid goes out and he sticks his hand out. The squad leader's some corporal, and he had called Jim Fogel's name, and Jim just sticks his hand. It was like, Jim Fogel. And the guy's looking at his hand, and he's like, oh, I got something for you, Jim Fogel. And I just, what happened next was pretty hilarious. I mean, we could skip it, but it induced me to take my serviceman's record book and look around for some other place to be at that time, which I overheard the guys in the intel shop talking about. Yeah, we need 2 more dudes from like Lima Company to fill out this thing for the stay in doc. And I was like, yeah, that's me. Yeah, here you go. Here's my paperwork. And they just, well, or whatever, dude. And the snipers came over and like, do you even know what snipers is? And I'm like, nope, it's Carlos Hathcock shit. And they were like, we're gonna fucking kill this kid. How's profanity on this show? We go all
good.
Okay. Yeah.
You can go balls deep with it, man.
Just balls deep.
Yeah.
Hey, though, the good news, I'm still friends with the 2 of the gentlemen that basically my very first team leader, my very first chief scout, I still speak with on a regular basis and work with them on different projects and stuff. So as much as they wanted to rip me into 4 different pieces and post me on the corners of Camp Pendleton as a warning to others, they turned out to be like great mentors for me. Yeah. So yeah, then after that, I came, basically I got a good chance early to go to sniper school. And because those guys ground me to death every day that they could before school started, I had it all squared away, made it through on my first try, which back in my day, back then it wasn't common that you got through on your first try. So it was cool.
Can you tell us about that? What was for the Marine Corps and going to a stay platoon? Because in the Army at that time, I don't even know if they had SOTIC, but maybe they did, but like sniper wasn't like a dedicated MOS like it was in the Marine Corps.
Well, technically in the Marine Corps, even today, I mean, it's a dedicated MOS even today, but it's not actually truly like 0311 is a dedicated MOS.
Oh, it is. Okay. My mistake.
Right. It was, well, and that's a fight that I'm in the Scout Sniper Association. I'm on the board. And one of the things that we're trying to do in the future is try to help the schoolhouses and the greater community sort of remind the organization as a whole how valuable snipers are and that it should be a dedicated MOS. Now, like recon Marines get to go to the recon sniper school now, so it's sort of becoming this bifurcation. But back then, to your question, sniper school was like the boogeyman that lasted 11 weeks, and it was this horrible. Every day you were told it was going to be your last before you even went. But I loved it because when dudes would quit, that's the day I wanted to quit, and some other guy would quit, and I'd be like, well, shit, I'm not quitting today. That guy sucks. But it was a secondary MOS. So the MOS, you'll see all the old dudes, it'll say like 8541 next to their name on their email, and probably every one of their PIN numbers. 8541. There you go. You're welcome, snipers everywhere. Hackers unite, go get them. But the new MOS is 0317. So it's still not technically your only job in the Marine Corps. You're still in 0311. You can still be, not a sniper.
It's like primary and secondary MOS in the Army, we'd call it.
Yep. Yeah. Well, it is. It's PMOS and secondary MOS,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it was, if you were lucky, you could stick around in the community for a while. But in the Marine Corps back then, especially, you needed to go into after your second enlistment, let's say, or even maybe for your second enlistment, depending, you might be in a B billet, which had nothing to do with it at all. And that was good for the Marine Corps to spread that kind of knowledge around. But for the individual, I was jealous of, like, guys could stay in the Ranger Regiment or in group like almost their whole careers, and I thought that was something that was, you put a lot of money into those individuals in the Army. And I thought, yeah, that's what you do when you invest in something that well. And but yeah, I the school was great because it taught me a bunch of things as a young man, just to get through the school. The mission planning that was incumbent upon you at that age was unbelievably detailed. I mean, you had to do every aspect of the mission was completely up to you. Like, the battalion commander can only give you his general guidance according to the doctrine. You select the FFP, you select the routes, you select the mode of transportation that you get to the drop. What's available is really what determines that. But you know what I'm saying? You get what I'm going. All that planning is on the sniper team leader. So you can't graduate the school unless you master that planning. One of the first things I learned in cybersecurity when I was hired by the guys that hired me was that planning, that detail, that unbelievable, like, 25 pages of the planning, that's how you conduct a penetration test. And if you knew how to do operational planning, if you've ever been a squad leader in the infantry and you've planned stuff out, you understand the 5-paragraph order, and that, like, in the E section, all that's where it gets big, is actions on objective, and the detail and the secondary, tertiary, everything's, back up everything, and all those things that you just know. Any staff sergeant anywhere knows. You grab a squad leader in the 82nd and be like, dude, here you go. You know how to plan this. That guy could be, brought into this field that I'm in now and already has a really good idea of how something needs to be done holistically. And it's a really important skill to have.
Ryan,
you can know everything you want about computers and not know that. Yeah, go ahead.
Could you tell us about your final shot in the sniper course? Because I've heard it's very nerve-wracking. I mean, it's nerve-wracking in any of the sniper schools, but I've heard in the Marine Scout Sniper course, it's quite challenging.
Are you talking about the general shoot? Where you're
I may be referencing different time periods, like friends of mine who were, my peers that went through the course. So they had to make a final shot in the course at the end of it. Like, this is like pass fail kind of deal.
Yeah, that was so every school would do it a little bit differently. Like, maybe even every class would be a little bit differently. Like, you might have like this whole scenario where you've been in the field for a couple of days and you're going to get one opportunity to send around at a target. So, and that might only be because, like, you were in the proper place with the proper, you actually had eyes on the objective that you were supposed to have and approached undetected. And finally, you see, like, the instructors are walking next to, like, a dude who fits the description that you're supposed to engage. at however many meters away, and that's the guy. And so we used to call it the general shoot. And then you would engage, but you'd hit it. You'd send it at a target, obviously not. But that changed a lot from class to class. Sometimes the hardest part of everything was the last week of school was Hell Week was week 8 or 9. You didn't even the week where you don't sleep is like deep in school. The very following week is field week, where you do that shoot, or you didn't make it that far. But to me, the hardest shot of all was the second day of qual, because I had my observer was absolutely, he was a sweet dude, he was a great Marine, but he couldn't call wind, and he didn't know how. And it was already in that far into school, he couldn't call wind.
Right.
So my buddy Bill Merwin is a guy from my platoon, and he and I, his partner would make it so that like Bill shot when I shot. And on the first, you had 3 days to qual. You really only needed to get 2. The first day of qual, I didn't qualify. I got 19. You needed 20. And I'm losing my mind. I'm literally going to pull all the hair out of my head because I didn't come this far to get, my guy can't call wind.
Right.
And so day 2, I'm waiting for Bill to make his wind call, or Bill's partner to make his wind call. And that's the wind I'm going to use. And these guys were like making their call a little extra loud so I could pick up on it. Because you're not, my boy Bill, he's like, oh, say it again, bro.
Yeah, right.
And I'm just like, fucking write that down, bro. We're doing 4 levels. And now, so the second day I qual, the last day, I'm borderline, right? I'm coming down to like my last 2 rounds, and we're shooting movers at like, I don't know, we're at what, 963 yards, I think it was. And I'm down to my last shot. And now to this day, I cannot tell you for sure whether the dudes down in the butts were like, that's English up there, he's a good dude. Cause I was giving away all school long. I could stalk my nuts off. Like once I knew earlier in stalking that I had already stalked every site on Camp Pendleton. And that's where the school is. And like, I knew every trick on Pendleton. So like I was giving away 10s to people like, hey man, this is your spot. Follow me. Like the last day of stalking, I stalked with a road guard vest on. My hand to God. You could ask anybody who went through that class. I was like, fuck it, I'll do it with a road guard vest. I was that good. So like I had already traded away some good,
G2.
I had already given away some political capital within the class. So I mean, I swear, I tell you, like, it's not like I can't shoot. I love shooting. I mean, for Lanzang Tactical, I'm testing all the rifles. You'll buy that rifle and there'll be a 3-shot group that's less than 3/4 of an inch. That was me, and I can still shoot really, even though I'm getting old, but like nobody's calling wind for you.
Yeah.
You ain't going to shoot well. And and so coming down that very last round, moving targets, like I think there were cut down echo target, like an IPSC target, but made out of cardboard, cut down, put on a lollipop, and walked. Everybody's walking in the butts, and so you just see them going by. And it probably wasn't too hard for somebody to just stick ram a spotter in there. I'll never know if I made that last shot or not.
Yeah, they keep those government ballpoint pins back there to hook a brother up. Yeah.
What are you talking about, Dave?
Yeah, you're gonna roll your eyes at me, Ryan. But as I relate this story from the Fort Benning sniper course, but the M24s are at the schoolhouse were kind of shot out at those days, and the night sights that they had at the schoolhouse at that time, I can't remember the nomenclature, but it was like looking through a fishbowl.
Was it the PVS 10? Was that what you guys had?
May have been.
Okay.
So doing night shoots, I mean, there may have been pasties falling off of those targets downrange. There may have been people nicking them up against the berm line. Even the instructors are looking at it like, oh, I think that's a burn on the edge of the target,
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some chicanery taking place. Yeah.
It should be known to the greater audience that there is not a more law-breaking, disregarding of any rule set organization in any service than snipers. In fact, I will the first day of school, the chief instructor, Todd Parisi, one of my mentors, I loved Todd Parisi as a human being, like as a man. He was, I called that dude up when I needed any advice, right? Todd was a great human being. Todd stands in front of the classroom. This dude was like the first dude to be the head instructor of 1st Marine Division School. It's just an E5. That's the respect that people had for him, right? And he stands up there and he goes, "Gentlemen, I'm here to tell you something very important. Don't ever get caught cheating in this class, because if you're caught cheating in this class, you will go home instantly and never be invited back. But I'm also going to tell you, you are going to have to cheat to get through this class." Because somewhere, some way during the class, you're going to cheat. "Robbie," and he looks at Robbie, reads me. He's like, "Did you cheat?" Right? All the time. "Tim Shimmick, did you cheat?" Shimmick goes, "Constantly." "You get caught?" "Hell no. If we catch you, you'll never see the inside of this building again." And it's like, wow, it's intimidating. But like, there's an old thing that laws don't apply to pigs. And that's, honestly, in the hacker community, like if you don't have that mindset of like, oh, you got a rule set, that's good. Your firewall rule, yeah, cool. Yeah, it doesn't apply to me. I'm going to look at that until I see where it doesn't work for anybody, and then that's where it works for me, and then that's where you go. You got to have that mindset, man. Everything is attainable. Everything is possible.
It's it's that old mentality. If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And if you get caught, you're trying hard enough.
Well, yeah. And just lest before we send the taxpayers into some sort of panic, I'll just say that, when we graduated the sniper course in the sniper section in the Ranger Regiment, we had top of the line equipment, and we were not playing those kind of games. Like, it was very, we were training to standard, and I know the Marine Scout snipers have very high standards as well. But when you have shitty equipment, maybe the left and right limits open up a little bit, right?
They do. That happened to me at Triple Canopy. That happened. I'm not going to name the manufacturer of the gas powered rifle that we were using, but the barrel life on that thing wasn't what it was supposed to be. And during qual, everybody's shooting on these M24s that were pretty well maintained, and everybody's just shooting knot holes. It's just watching professional dudes get their, everybody's just smoking the FBI qual. And then you stuff the M24 in the bag and you pull out the other rifle, and then you proceed to go unk, like all the way down the line. Guys are flipping out and cursing and smashing things because I just saw myself shoot. I know the shooting can happen from me I could do the thing.
Right.
And then so, the State Department overseer had to be like, if it wasn't for that dude, he actually, I can't remember who, that guy actually, the instructors were like, look, watch these guys shoot. All of them will pass the qual with a bolt action rifle. Then they'll shoot the same exact qual with a gas gun, and like 3/4 of them won't pass. So what do you want to do about this? And the guy was like, "You got a copy machine? Go take those little targets and blow them up 200%." Because I just want to see bullets go into the lines, just and because common sense would tell you that individual can shoot. When I was working at TC, if you went on leave and you had if you were a DDM who got assigned a bolt gun and you went on leave, other dudes would be like, "Hey brother, let me borrow your rifle while you're gone," to do their quals, because you don't want to chance it. That's, you're shooting for your dinner. It's,
let me give quick.
Schoolhouse guns never live that long. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, let me give a quick shout out to our sponsor for this show. It's Mad Rabbit. Mad Rabbit makes this tattoo balm. They are committed to reinventing tattoo aftercare, founded by two friends with a passion for ink. And their product is this tattoo balm that revitalizes and replenishes and proactively preserves tattoo ink. It's effective on both new and old tattoos on all skin types. They use natural ingredients. It has 8 ingredients: shea butter, cocoa butter, beeswax, calendula, which is a flower, sweet almond, lavender, frankincense, and cucumber. And so this is we're all tattooed Marines and Army veterans here, very typical of all of us. We all have some tattoos. So Mad Rabbit really helps you take care of them and makes them last longer. So when you think of tattoo care, think Mad Rabbit. They've preserved over 1.5 million tattoos, and right now they've got an exclusive offer just for the Team House listeners. If you go to madrabbit.com/team and you use the promo code TEAM, you'll receive 25% off. That's 25% off when you head to madrabbit.com/team and use their promo code TEAM. So go check them out, guys.
Ryan, for maybe our audience who, because I don't, we've had like Emil on and some others, but we've never had a real Marine sniper on, which, you know, I mean, Marine snipers are the world. Oh, have we?
Ed Kugler.
Yeah.
Ed Kugler,
Huh?
Vietnam War,
Oh, I'm so
Marine
sorry.
Corps legend. It's not your fault, Dave. You were in a bad way when I did that.
Oh,
interview.
that's right. That was after. Yeah, that was during the concussed.
But you're their first contemporary Marine Scout sniper.
So can you kind of give us a little bit of the, like, when you talk about the guy, your spotter not being able to read winds, like, can you tell our audience a little bit about like how a sniper team works and what's important about the winds and reading trace and those types of things?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Jack, I would challenge your description of me as a contemporary anything. I'm getting kind of old, man, but the basics don't change. And reading wind is probably the most important part of getting around to go from point A to point B, exactly where you want it to go. Right. The rest of precision shooting is a mathematical equation, coupled with fundamental mechanical things that you do, like breathing, relax before you shoot, hold your point of aim, good trigger break, squeeze, those are things anybody can be taught, and they can repeat them and be perfect. So mechanically, you've got this thing, you just never get it wrong once you've done it enough. And then the ammunition, your assumption is that you've got really good ammunition, match grade quality ammunition, always goes the same place as last round went. But wind is really hard to do right, because number one, it's a variable. Nature's blowing, and then it's not blowing so hard. It's gusting, and then it's not. So how do you know what that wind is doing between you and the target? So the first thing you want to be doing is you want to look for all the little indicators that are on the ground or just above, like maybe several feet above ground level between you and the target, like trees, like little shrubs, like leaves on the ground or garbage, or somebody's hung their laundry out and you see like shirts blowing in the breeze. The first thing that's important to know about calling wind is it going left to right or is it going right to left? And my partner in school, he I don't know if it was his vision or what, but we would look through the spotting scope, and he would only be able to confirm for me that it's left wind, man. He would say it in this very, as a matter of fact, kind of, he'd be like, well, it's left to right. And that would be it. And I'd be like, well, okay,
That's bad.
I can see that. I need to know how much, left am I going?
I feel that on my face. Yeah.
Yeah, I could tell. I'm watching the same places that you are. I know what I'm doing. And so there is an art form to it. Like they'll give you a list. They'll say, okay, if it's 3 to 5 miles an hour and you're shooting this projectile, that assume they're all the same, they're this bullet weight going this fast, then at this distance that's the time of flight from muzzle to target. So if it's in that time of flight, it's exposed to this 5 mile an hour wind that's going from left to right for this long, like maybe a second and a half. But in that amount of time, it's in a river of air, just like a river. It's like being in the water. So if you're trying to swim from one end of the river to the other end to meet your loved ones, your girl, and you have to swim, if you swim right at her, you're going to land, you come ashore like way over here to her left because you forgot to swim into the course of the current. So you got to pick how upstream you want to swim to let the water blow you back onto her. You come climbing out right in front of her, Navy SEALs, successful, handsome, looking good, dripping wet, James Bond, boy shorts, Ranger panties. That's the goal, on target. So if you can shoot into that wind stream and have it push your bullet right back into where it's supposed to be, it's art and it's science. Like you can actually look and say, if you know it's 7 miles an hour, let's say at the midpoint between you and the target, let's say you're at 800 yards and that 400-yard wind is exactly 7 miles an hour. Yes, you can go look on that chart and go, cool, I need to go 1.5 mil radians into the wind. And you'll dial that or adjust that in your scope and you'll be on target. But the art of doing it without looking at the paper and in between shots, your observer's job is, oh, by the way, you asked about how the sniper team works. So the senior person on the sniper team is usually the observer, because he's going to handle things like he's got the radio, he's got the bigger, more powerful scope, and he's looking in a greater area. Let's say he's focused on all the things that are happening around the sniper team.
And he has the harder job. I mean, it's harder to call wind and call trace than it is. I mean, to learn the fundamentals of marksmanship. The sniper just has to put it on target and execute the fundamentals, right?
That's right. When I'm teaching shooters, or anybody ever is teaching shooters, especially in this context, you tell that person like, hey, the shooter is your robot person. Mm-hmm. He's just a living robot. That's all he is. And you tell him where to put the crosshairs, and he's going to let you know that they're on the place you want. And then the rest of he's just going to listen, and it's your job to feed him information. Like, all right, man, a constantly evolving diatribe of like the wind is this, or you could just be like 5 points left, 0.5 left, 0.5 left, 0.8 left, 0.8 left, and he's going to squeeze it whenever it's appropriate, right? But you just keep giving him that information. The trace that you talked about, what Dave was saying, the trace is interesting. Some people call it trace, some people call it vapor trail, but given the right conditions, you're looking through a scope at a target. Usually it's going to have to be a few hundred meters away, like 500 or 600 meters best. I mean, you can see it at 300, but it's better to be farther. And you see the mirage of the sun, has heated this air that's close to the ground, and the mirage is coming up off the ground. This air is waving. It's called a boil, and it looks like water boiling in a pot. Remember? And so the water boils, and if the wind is being pushed to the left, then, or my left, shooter's left, then it looks like the boil is doing this little hand wavy look, right? And right, and you can see that in the scope. If you take let's say you have a 20 power scope, you focus to where the target is perfectly crisp, and then you dial it unfocused a quarter of a turn counterclockwise. So now you're actually looking at the air that's about halfway between you and the target. So if a person was there, he'd be in focus, not the target anymore. So now you're seeing this air halfway through. Pretty cool. But then you see the round cut through that air, and it disturbs that air and leaves a wake like a speedboat going, right down the middle of Lake Tahoe. You see that wake, and the speedboat kind of curves. You could see it hook with the wind. It's like watching somebody throw a curveball at a far enough distance. Is really amazing. And you can see it either hit the target or miss the target, or where in the target it hits. Mm-hmm. And it's phenomenal. Like if you can do that, then you can call your observer on. So like he might miss his first shot, but if you know your job, your shooter will never miss his second shot, because you're going to instantly give him a perfect adjustment, because you saw the trace, mm-hmm. You saw the wind, and you just tell him two things: give me another half right, go. And then that person's good, ready to go. He sends it right away, hits Phil, and everybody's happy. But it's an art form. It takes a lot of time to learn how to do it right. And the guys I know, like police snipers that spend all their time on the range, they get this good, or military guys who, again, spend all their time on the range shooting government ammunition. The only way to get this good, or you got to spend like 10 grand on ammunition, because it takes a long time to develop that the familiarity with the wind to be very good at it. Yeah. And my guy wasn't.
Yeah. And it's like you say, like if that guy doesn't read the wind, if he can't see trace, if you call your shot and you go, where the crosshair snap, and you're like bottom left, and he goes, I missed it. Like he didn't see the trace. Yeah. To correct you, it's like, shit.
Yeah. That's like literally if you blink, you miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That round may as well have never happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're really good, you have a really good position, you could absorb the recoil of the rifle and be back on the scope as the shooter. You can be back on the scope in time to see the round impact or
Mhm.
splash, maybe in the target or to the left or to the right, like in the dirt. If you're lucky, if you have a good position, and usually you got, inside 300 yards, you're not going to recover that fast, right? But outside you can, because the amount of time it takes for the round to travel. You can call your own splash sometimes, but you don't want that. That's not your job. You're supposed to be thinking about getting the crosshair back on the target, not looking for impacts. That's your observer. And if you're out there alone, you got to do all that. But that's not the way the team works, right? You want to have that teammate taking all that work off your hands to make you that's why the team works so well. That's why sniper teams are so effective. One's the brains and the other one's the machine.
So Ryan, after you graduated from the schoolhouse, what was it like getting to your unit, going out with the fleet? You started deploying. I mean, what was the life like at this time?
It's a different life once you have once you graduate school, you're a different human being. And a few years back, I'll never understand. So I met a bunch of the guys at the Army schoolhouse. This is back when Justin Vidito and a couple of the other guys that we were still friends with, guys that were there shooting or instructing. Dane Lentz was there, and a couple other cats who, they're younger, so you guys might not know them anymore. But they asked me, they said, listen, look, if you could be a guest speaker here, what would you say? And I would tell them, and they eventually had a guest speaker drop out. And I said this, now that you've graduated this school, you have this little piece of paper. You're entitled to walk into anybody's office and say, look, I'm Ryan English. I'm team leader for a 3-5 stay platoon, and I need some of your helicopters for some training. So, when can I get some? And you just walk in. You're a corporal in the Marine Corps, carries a lot of weight, though, right? So, if you want it to, it's not like being E4 in the Army. Like, you walk in as a corporal, you're like, hey, who's in charge here? Yeah, I'm Corporal English. I'm in 3-5 stay platoon. I'm a sniper team leader. You don't say it's that's way too dickish. But you'd be like, yeah, I'm one of the team leaders in 3-5 stay. Yep. And I'm going to need some of these Hueys for some aerial shooting. So when can I get them? And the audacity usually is like, they're like, oh, well, let's go see the training schedule here. And, we've got some time here. You 2 birds, what area? And you're like, yeah, cool. And then you leave. You've just coordinated your own helicopter. You have the authority to go into places and if you're respectful and you tell them why. I would go down to the artillery guys, be like, listen, man, I need to know more about what actually happens here. Like, how do you make the thing go that far and land on the place? And like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm Corporal Williams. I'm with 3-5 stay. I'm one of the snipers. Oh, well, yeah, it's cool, man. We're doing a shoot next week. You want to come out? Yes, I do. I want to watch big guns go explosion time. And I want to know what you're doing here that makes that work, and so that's if you have the credential to ask a person what his job is and how you can interact with him better, that's the biggest thing about graduating that school. The other thing that's really cool about graduating that school is nobody can say shit to you anymore in your own battalion. Like, you're now one of the anointed, and like you can
yeah,
it's like in the Marine Corps, once you graduate the school and you have the hog's tooth on your neck, you get a lot. They cut a lot of slack to you. Like, you get to do things that you're out of the microscope a lot. You don't have to answer the detailed questions about what you're doing today. Because,
what are the differences between the Army and the Marine Corps? The Army, you have a lot of bling on your uniform and all these badges and everything. And even Marines who graduate from Ranger school, they're customary. They can't wear their Ranger tab, so a lot of them wear it under their the flap of their camis.
Yeah.
So when you graduate the Scout Sniper course, that hog's tooth is a big deal. Do you want to tell people who don't know what that is?
Yeah, the hog's tooth is a big deal. The day you graduate, there's a couple customs that happen on graduation day. The only one I think I'll discuss today is the hog's tooth. The hog's tooth is the thing, though. Here's the thing about the hog's tooth: on the nights when you want to quit, having that hog's tooth on your neck is the thing one of the many things that keeps you kind of in the game. What they do is they'll pull a projectile out of a match grade 308 round, or today, be a 300 Win Mag, but they'll pull the projectile out of a match grade round, drill it, and hang it on a piece of 550 cord with double fisherman's knot on each side, and present it to you on graduation. Just a bullet on a string, right? But the only guys wearing that are other guys who have graduated the school. And the phrase hog's tooth comes from a misunderstanding that was clarified many years ago. Now, I'll give you the rumor is, it's like, when the legend becomes true, print the legend. So here's what kind of I'm pretty sure happened. And if there's other hogs out there listening, please, let us know. But for the longest time, students at all the Marine Corps schools were not called by their name. Well, they were, but they were mostly just called pigs. That's what you are, and that's how you're getting treated. And the idea since the beginning of time was to do anything and everything to the students that would make them not want to be there anymore. Mm-hmm. And the idea was to continuously challenge your equanimity, make you want to lose emotional control over yourself and lose your bearing and become irritated and annoyed. The idea is that if you're asking somebody to spend days and days out, crawling on their belly to get to some place and have total discipline and expect them to come back with either intel or having, engaged something important, that's an amazing amount of discipline. And so if something bothers you, like somebody calling you a pig for 11 weeks or however many weeks it is now, maybe you shouldn't be in this job. I mean, it's nothing personal. It's a non-gendered word. It's not like pig S or pig. There's a lot of other shit they're calling you, but pig is what you are. And one day and I can't remember, obviously everybody wants to take credit for this. I don't know if it was, the Quantico school or the 1st Marine Division school, some senior officer in charge of division schools overheard the instructors calling the students pigs. And when they call you pig, it's not like, you're not Wilbur, you're not the cute pig, right. Charlotte's not spinning a web over you, right. It's like you're being referred to pig, and it's like the ugliest word in the English language. It's all the ugliness. It's like, you pigs and everything all the time. And, if you let it get to you, just pack your shit. Well, somebody I guess in colonel, lieutenant colonel, somebody at that level, asks to, come into the instructor's hooch and demands to know, why are you calling these Marines pigs? Those are Marines. Those young men are Marines. And I hear you calling them pigs. That's not what they are. They're Marines. You need to tell me why. I've heard this all week, and every time I come by here, it's pig this and pig that. No, those are Marines. You need to explain to me what that is. And some enterprising gunnery sergeant says, listen, sir, that's not a farm animal. That's an acronym that means professionally instructed gunmen. Okay, a PIG, professionally instructed gunmen. So you see, at this phase of their evolution, sir, those Marines, they're just professionally instructed gunmen. And that's not what we want to turn out at the school. What we turn out at this school, sir, is hogs, hunters of gunmen. See, so we remind them that they're just swine, professionally instructed gunmen until the day they graduate. And then obviously they've accredited hunters, bless you off, hunters of gunmen. So the hog's tooth, had already been the hog's tooth, but it actually was given that name, but it's something you wear with a lot of pride. You don't leave it hanging out. It's under your shirt, because it's copper jacketed, it turns your chest kind of green, and
right.
But
right.
It just doesn't matter though, because when you have it, it's like people in your unit, it's like they're going to cut you slack. You can get things, you can get stuff done for your people. You got a team now, and you go into admin and you're like, I want to know why my guy's not getting his leave papers done. And the day before you graduated, you're just another guy. And they're like, yeah, you know what? Take a number. I'll fucking tell you when your guy gets his leave. He'll know, but I'll tell you what, I'll tell him, then I'll tell you. You walk in there as a sniper and you're like, you still got to be respectful, but you're like, hey, look, I'd like to know why my guy doesn't have his shit. And suddenly it's a different conversation, because the word we're looking for here, the most important word in the Marine Corps, the phrase is, do you rate?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, does he or she rate? You don't rate. Don't talk to him. You don't rate.
How does that work in the Marine Corps? Is it because I don't know how you're set up. Are you attached to an infantry battalion?
Yeah.
The reason I'm asking is because obviously the Marine Corps, by and large, frowned on recon and forced recon because everybody in the Marine Corps is special. They're not special, right? And you sort of redheaded stepchildren, where snipers are fully embraced and given that clout that other units might not get.
Well, you're right. The thing about, so I think it was General Al Gray was the commandant, and this is in the 80s. And Al Gray was an awesome human being, and he was a commandant when I enlisted. But they at some point in the 80s, the Marine Corps was offered to let Force Recon guys be part of SOCOM, and he said, no, I'm not going to create a division in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps is an elite organization, so I'm not going to create that division. All Marines are elite.
Right.
Okay. I mean, I'll honestly, man, like after contracting and going to Benning a lot and being around the guys in the 75th Ranger Regiment, man, the last 20 years that nobody gets the training and the amount of work that the Ranger Regiment has had, I don't think. But prior to that, and maybe in the future, I'll take a platoon of Marines anywhere in the world, because they really do get a lot of training, and it's the discipline and it's the esprit de corps that they know what every Marine before them did, going back to like the dawn of time. And that's something that, like, I always give the Army guys in my life shit. I'm like, when's the Army birthday? You don't know. No one cares. I'm like, nobody gives a shit, and nobody ever will.
Right.
But everybody on Earth knows when November 10 comes around, because every dude even the guys who hated their time in the Marine Corps walks around and like,
Right.
You just listen, everybody out there, like on November 10th, open your ears up and you're going to hear guys going, and the Marine Corps sniper ecosystem, yes, it lives inside the infantry battalion for now. And it has in the past, but it may shift. They live in the battalion because they are the battalion's, essentially they do surveillance and reconnaissance for the battalion commander. So they actually, in most cases, live in the S2 shop, which is the intel shop. So they're isolated a little bit. Some battalions try to put them in weapons company. That doesn't really work. You've got a bunch of free-spirited guys. You're going to put them in heavy weapons company. It's like it's never been a good fit. But the infantry battalion has always benefited greatly from having that asset right there in-house. And it's a force multiplier, and it always has been. And the Marine Corps does this after every war. They try to get away from this stuff, and we don't need them here. We'll put them all up at regiment, and then the regiment can dole them out if we ever need them like that. Okay, that could still work if it's the same number of individuals, but you know what? It doesn't help when I need to go down to Lima Company and talk to the Lima Company commander, and like I might belong to him for the entire deployment. I want to get to know him. I want to know what his voice sounds like on the radio. He needs to know me so that when I tell him what's up on the X, he knows it's, dude, English is a good dude, man. If he tells me this is happening, it's happening. If you stick me up at regiment, I don't get that FaceTime. And it's interesting because like there's those parallels too in cybersecurity where like I need to tell the information security apparatus needs to tell the rest of the organization, like, look, we're here to do this work for you. You need to know me. You need to trust when I say something is good or it's not going to be good, that, and that selling yourself is a never ending thing in cybersecurity. It's a never ending thing for snipers and recon guys. Rangers don't have that problem. I know, Jack, but
Rangers, once upon a time, there were snipers, two-man sniper teams attached to each Ranger company. And then it wasn't until later on that they were consolidated into sniper sections. So I think all of these units have their own kind of growing pains and evolutions, and all of them have come a long way since 9/11, of course.
They have, but then I start seeing signs of this today when we have like our meetings and we do these things where, we hear from guys that are at the schoolhouse today, and they're like, well, the Corps doesn't really, they're going to readjust. Right. You know what it always comes down to? I hate that shit. You know what it comes down to? Yep. Whether it's, somebody, it's always some major trying to make lieutenant colonel in Quantico or at the Pentagon, who's reinventing the wheels. Oh, sir, I got this great idea. Here's what we're going to do. we're gonna take those assets, we're repackage it, and we're gonna call it that. And it's like,
Yep.
Why would you do that? You know, did you not just watch the 20 years before you happened, where snipers were like working it, and like just stacking it everywhere they went? Rangers, Marines, doesn't matter. Like, guys are just stacking shit, and now you're gonna what?
A good idea, Ferry, trying to put 10 pounds of shit into a 5-pound bag.
Yes,
Right.
This is so common. Yeah.
Yeah. I need to get promoted to E3. Let me come up with a smart idea that like gets me there, you know, or
you know what?
Or I mean 05 or whatever, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah. It's the guy who's trying to make 06. You know, he's like,
very dangerous.
Brilliant idea.
Very dangerous.
I'm going to take a giant shit on what worked, and I'm going to call it something different. You know,
I've invented something completely new.
Look what I did. So,
you know, if I was trying to make Colonel, I would say, hey guys, here's my great plan. I just studied the last 20 years of warfare, and we totally stomped ass when we did these things. So I'm gonna leave everything alone.
Yeah.
And that's it. that's the tweet.
Feet up on the desk, drinking a beer. Yeah. So Ryan, what led to you, you know, getting out of the Marine Corps then?
You know, two things. You know, after watching what happened in Somalia in 1993, a lot of guys, you know, it's like two of the kids in my class were in they were the only Marines ever to be pulled out of class and then dropped back in. You always start over from day one. But Grant Reynolds and Andrew Lopez went to Somalia with the first, they went with the first, I can't remember what MU they were in, but they were the first dudes ashore.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they turned it over to, was it Gothic Serpent happened? What?
Yes. When
the Rangers in Delta and everybody took over the humanitarian mission, and you know, 10th Mountain, everybody, when NATO took over or the UN or whatever took over the humanitarian mission, that disastrous day when the American military apparatus basically said, all right, well, that sucked real bad, we're just going to leave. I think a lot of guys looked at that and said, I'm out of here. Well, yeah. I'm not going to be one of those guys, you know, get roughed up one day and then we just walk out of there. That's not my style. I'm going to leave. And so I thought, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to come back as a pilot. I'm going to be flying helos, because I thought, I looked around the Marine Corps, you know, and in all my experience, I was like, dude, I'm going to come back as like a warrant officer and like fly helicopters and then like just surf the last however many years of my life as that guy. You know what I mean? Like I thought, okay, I'm just going to go pick up a degree or come back as an officer or warrant and just never have to talk. I don't have to listen to anybody's bullshit. You know, I'm not going to stand in formations. I'm just going to go back to this type of thing. But in the Marine Corps, I thought that's cool. I'll be a pilot. And then I took an excruciatingly long time in college to get through college on purpose. But I didn't have any student loans. And nobody else should either. No. But the war started in my
fifth year?
In September of my senior year in college. Yeah. The war started and I was leaving my house. And my roommate was from New York City. I was from Jersey, but he had lived in New York City for a long time. And he had a horrible accent. He's like, hey, fucking some dude just crashed a plane in the building, bro. You want to come and see this? And I'm like, nah, I got to go to class. He's like, it's on fire. And I'm like, okay, cool. You know, whatever. And I look at it and I'm like, yeah, it's really burning. That sucks. I wonder what kind of plane it was. Like, I don't know. And he's sitting there, you know, I go to class. I had just bought a cell phone like 6 months before. My dad calls me as I'm parking the car. And he's like, son, they hit the other one. And I'm like, the fuck you talking about, man? And he's like, the other building, they hit it with a plane. They flew it right into it. He goes, son, I took you there once when you were 3 years old. We went up in there and we saw that there could be 50,000 people in there right now. And I'm like, holy shit. I walk into my class, political science, right? Walk into poli-sci, and the instructor had already, I guess he had heard. And he's like, okay, everybody, you know, and I'm just sitting there listening to this guy talk. And I'm like, I'm fucking out of here. I got to go. So I immediately, like, I go home, I grab my shit. I start calling the recruiting office. They're not answering, you know, the phone. So about a week and a half later, I finally get in front of a recruiter and he's like, dude, We don't want prior service guys. We got plenty of guys, you know? And I'm like, but I'm an 85-41. I'm a scout sniper. You definitely want me. It's like, man, no, dude, we don't need you in the Marine Corps right now. You know, it's not going to happen. I can't write enough waivers to get you in. And I was like, man, okay. So, you know, I finished up school in May of that year. You know, the war was over essentially. So it's like, what are you going to do? You know, I'm not, that's it. Y'all killed it. You guys stomped ass 3 weeks. That's all, you know, cool. That's it. And we're okay. I'm like, well, I guess I'm just going to do whatever now, I guess. Well, you know, then all of a sudden everybody starts talking about, let's go to Iraq. I'm thinking, oh, that's interesting. We should go to Iraq, you know? You know, you remember the first time you heard it? You're like, what? Really? Okay.
Saddam? What?
Saddam? Yeah. And then it was over in 3 weeks. What are you gonna do? You can't get in fast enough to go to these things.
War's
right?
over, Ryan. You missed it. You missed the war, Ryan.
Yeah,
it's
over, bro.
It's over.
You know, up until guys went, up until like dudes were like, well, we've positioned Marines into the forward area in Kuwait and blah blah blah. I'm like, nah, they're not gonna go. 3 weeks later, it's over. So I'm just all right, man. But by 2004, when I started contracting, everyone knew this is not going to end anytime soon. Like you just knew. You could read the newspaper, then you would know. You know, you could read between the lines and say to yourself, well, I've read all these history books about Vietnam. I'm pretty sure they said this exact same dumb shit every time somebody asked them how it's going. And if I remember correctly, those Afghanis are kind of like guerrillas.
Everything's going great.
Everything's going great. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. We're making progress. Our metrics are good.
Right.
And you're sitting there reading that shit. You're like,
right. Yeah. Wait, metrics. Like, what do we need to do to win this again? Like, how do we define victory? Yeah.
Atmospherics.
Yeah. That's it.
Atmospherics. Yeah.
Atmospherics.
Mm.
So
contracting was your way into the fight, Ryan. So tell us how that went down.
So actually the way it started was a buddy of mine went into he had graduated school before me and he was a little smarter than me. He was in the Marine Corps with me in our first go round. He got into the Air Force into their combat controller pipeline. So I was like, well, all right, I don't necessarily want to go active duty, but there's a combat controller unit in Kentucky that's in the Guard, right? And I'm like, I'll go up there, do the qual, right? Smoke that. And then I'm like, cool. And then I get done. The guy's like, all right, man, could be 8 months, could be a year. And I'm like, whatever, dude, this war's not going to end. So I had a buddy of mine from the Corps who was working for a company called USIS, United States Investigative Service at the time, just called USIS. Doesn't even exist now. But they had this contract where they were training Iraqi police and Iraqi dignitary protection. And they were in Baghdad. They were at Camp Victory, the big camp, which was adjacent to the airport, if anybody knows where that's at, BIAP, Baghdad International Airport. But it was just above area 4, area 5, wherever the SF camp was. And that's where our camp was Camp Dublin, right? So we had this huge camp. My buddy gets me on the gig and it's like the middle of 2004. And it was really cool because we're training these Iraqi police how to just basically be effective with firearms. And that's an adventure. I don't want to talk shit about my students at that time, but like, you know, some of them have an athletic mindset, some don't. And then we would let them loose on the world to try to do good in their own country. And then they'd be better prepared for the insurgents that they were dealing with. And it was a really good job. They paid really well. It was a great camp. I had a wonderful time. And I met a lot of really old school people that were really just serious guys with serious knowledge. I learned a lot. But the coolest thing was every Thursday night, everybody from MNFI, the Multinational Forces Iraq, because the DoD element of the contract ruled the police thing, and then the State Department guys were worried about the dignitary protection. So they would come down to our cookout every Thursday night because it was the only place on BIAP where there was alcohol served. Now, I'm not going to say to you that there were uniformed Army officers drinking booze on our camp every Thursday night, because that would mean that they were in violation of some general number one.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't presume to tell you that our officers would be that, flagrant to break those rules. But every Thursday night we got smashed, and I got to sit with people who were like colonels, and we're on the Monday morning brief with Sec Def next Monday or last Monday, and sit there and listen to these guys vent. And I had the intel reports that they would get, they'd share with us, and it was anything that wasn't above a certain level of classification I could read. And it was an amazing place to be. That camp was an amazing thing, and it really kind of switched me on to a lot of stuff. And then in the middle of 2006, one of my other buddies from the Marine Corps was in a LRS unit in the Guard. And let me tell you something, I had a good life in Baghdad, man. I had 2 cell phones. I had a VoIP phone. I could call home for free. Voice over internet protocol. Look it up.
That was fancy shit back then.
That was fancy shit back then.
Yeah.
I had, I eventually had Wi-Fi in my room. That's another story, but it was amazing, right? My buddy calls me up and he's like, "Hey, my unit's going to deploy to Iraq in August." And I'm like, "That's awesome, dude. You get here, you let me know what you need, because I've been here for 2 years and I can get you anything. Like, you've been in Baghdad in the same place for 2 years. You know enough people, you can get anything. Like, I'll get you burner rockets. I get you burner guns and grenades. I just, doing deals, man." And I was like, "Oh," and he's like, "No, dude, no. I was thinking maybe you'd want to come with me. You re-enlist. You should come on this deployment." And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Making $650 American a day.
Right.
Why do you want me to leave this? Oh yeah. And then the Air Force had called and they were like, "Hey, we got your spot." And I'm like, "Nah, $650 a day, a day." That was a huge mistake. I should have taken that. But my buddy is one of my best friends, and I had seen all these intel reports, and I had seen how all these things were shaken out, and how guys, a sniper team got ambushed in the Anbar Marines, that they were listening to their S2 officer, who told them to meet their connect in the middle of a wadi. You guys might remember this. This is late 05, early 06, right? And they listen. You're not supposed to fucking listen to anybody but you. If you're the team leader of a sniper team, you decide, right? The battalion commander can jump up and down and say, "I want you in this spot." But if you don't look at that, you look at the map and you're like, "That's not tactically what I want to do. It doesn't look good." And you just go, "Okay, sir. Well, yeah, okay, roger that."
Be right back. I need another
and then you
beer
just
for
do
this.
What's that?
I just need another beer for this. I'll be right back.
Right on. All right. So, so obviously I've been made aware of all this stuff, and I've seen these things happening, and I've seen these intel reports, and I'm like, "Oh my God, dude, my best friend, is going to be subject to this nonsense. Like, he's going to go in." And I'm like, "Well, LRS is a pretty cool part of the Army, and they are the descendants of long range reconnaissance patrol in Vietnam, LRPs. And man, if you read up on LRPs and the history of the Recondo school and LRPs in general, and the part that they played, those guys went and worked with Mac v. SOG. Those guys did the things, right? LRPs was an amazing thing, and the Army should have never got rid of it. It's force recon for the Army, essentially. And I thought, well, shit, there's worse places to go, and it's my best friend. So I'm not gonna. I knew one thing was true. I'm like, I'm not gonna be ambushed in a wadi, or have some dudes falling asleep in my Iraqi counterparts, green on blue me or whatever. Like, I'm not gonna let it happen, and I'm not gonna let it happen to my friend, and I'm not gonna let it happen to whatever team I'm on. And the one thing he told me is like, "Look, dude, the company commander already told me, man, if you come here and you re-enlist, you and me are a team." And I'm like, "Well, shit, dude, this is a cool thing. You get to go." And it's going to sound real weird to anybody listening. I'm going to sound like a monster when I say this, but you get to go to a place like Iraq with your best friend,
right?
And
do what you've been training for your whole life.
Yeah, your whole life.
Yeah.
And it's you and your best friend against the world, man. It's I'll take those odds, man. And I'm like, I wasn't going to, I wasn't going to look back on my life and say I let something happen like that. And my friend went and I didn't. And so I came home on my next rotation and signed the papers, man. And like we trained up. We went. We started off in Kirkuk for a few months, like 1 month in Kirkuk, and then we just threw everything in trucks and Hummers, and drove to Talifar for like a year. And it was we got there at the end of 06 and stayed there for basically almost a year. And we did all of our missions up and down the border of Syria. So from the top of Anbar all the way up into Kurdistan, we would do surveillance and the goal was to be catching guys coming across the border with, like, obviously we're trying to catch guys with bomb making stuff. So, caught a lot of dudes, with like a lot of fuel oil for ANFO, ammonium nitrate fuel oil bombs that you make IEDs out of. Missions would last anywhere from like 3 days to 5 or 6 days or more, depending on the weather. So we were able to do things that I thought were, pretty cool at the time. And then we got to hang out in Kurdistan a lot, and we got to hang out with, seeing what happened in the Sinjar Mountains when ISIS took over, to the Yazidi population really hurt, because we spent a lot of time with those people, and they were very cool with us. Like, the Yazidis were almost as great as the Kurds as far as like, you didn't let your guard down per se, but like when you were around the Yazidis, you saw people were smiling and waving at you, and that's what you thought it was supposed to be the whole time. Yeah. At the beginning of the war, like, they're smiling and waving at us. We're the liberators. Well, the Yazidi people were like, yeah, they're cool. Yeah. You didn't see that anywhere else. I had been in Iraq prior to that time. I'd been there for like 2 years. The Yazidis were the first ones in the Kurds to be like, Habibi,
Ryan, you got to Talafar kind of just after I was, like, when in 375 we were going in there. That's in 05 doing hits, and it was a shit show. I mean, we got into firefights every time we went into the city, and for people who don't know out there, the Yazidi are a ethnic and religious minority in northwestern Iraq, and the United States, we were a good thing for them. We kind of protected them. And the Yazidi were great people. When I was back in Iraq in 09, they were my interpreters, a couple of those dudes who immigrated to Nebraska with their families, thankfully, before everything went down with ISIS. But the stories of what happened to the family that was left behind, to their parents, it's really like too horrific to even talk about on YouTube. I'm like beyond description. I don't think the real story has ever really been told about how bad that was. I mean, it was a genocide. But anyway, that's another story for another time, maybe. So as you were a assistant team leader on a LRS team, and you were out there, did you get to do some like long range reconnaissance ops while you were out there?
Yeah. We did quite a few. In fact, the very first, mission we ever did was like real cool, straight up, like humping in 10 or more clicks with a week's worth of gear on your back, surveilling, this particular village that we thought was, the previous guys had told us was probably a good focal point to see who the bad guys were in that village. So, man, we had a good spot, man. I had a really inventive, my hide was really inventive. I had I stole a couple of as you are wont to do as a sniper, you start stealing shit from other places on base to make your life easier. So I stole a bunch of the camo netting and a bunch of those little pop-up the supporters for the camo netting. So we dug a pretty decent hole in the ground, deep enough for, I think we had 6 guys, and wide enough. And because, there were no trees where we could build like overhead covers. So I had enough of that camo netting to basically lay it in with the spreaders. I was able to create a really convincing hide site on a place, not the hilltop, but the military crest, where you'd normally be kind of skyline, but I was able to hide it really well in that first night. So by daylight, you couldn't, you had to come right up on us to see us. And it was a good site. We were going to spend 5 days in that hole. We got discovered on day 4 by a goat herder. Day 3, I saw a predator in the sky, and I'm like, I get on the radio and I'm like, hey,
just so you know,
there's a pred up there, right? And they're like, what? No. And I'm like, no, I'm looking right at it. You can hear it. It's a lawnmower in the sky. You're like, no, I'm on my back. I'm like, no, I'm looking right at it. And then somebody on the other end's like, break. Yeah, no, there's no predator up there for you. That's not, just don't worry about that anymore. That's not there. You just do your mission. I'm like, oh, okay.
They're doing like the Jedi hand wave. There is no predator.
There is no predator up there. And I was sitting there in that hole and I'm like, man, I'm sweating so bad out here. I'm itchy. I mean, I'm peeing in a bag. I got to wait till nighttime if I want to, the rest of my constitutionals. And like, I'm not the happiest guy in the world at this point, middle of day 3,
Yeah.
And I'm like, what am I doing out here if there's a pred that could do my job for me?
Right.
Like,
there's some like guy in a air conditioned
yes,
room somewhere. Yeah. Back in the States flying that thing.
Yes. And there's a funny story about that. We'll talk about that. We might have to talk about that another time, but like, there's a funny story about why that guy was in the States and not in Bahrain. Like, but that guy's in the air conditioning wherever he was. And like, I'm like, I don't need to be here anymore. This sucks. And but it was, it was good. We got to learn what it was like to get compromised by goats. And that's everybody who's been in a position long enough in Iraq, somewhere you get compromised by goats.
Yeah.
And
yeah, you can't do recon. Yeah. Out there. Yeah.
You're not looking at anything worth seeing. You're not in a place to look at anything worth seeing and not be somewhere where there's goats.
And not be compromised. Yeah.
And not be compromised. You're going to get compromised by goats.
Yeah.
It's just a question of when. And what do? It's like, I'm not going to, we're like, Red Wings had already happened. We're not going to, we're not killing these goat herders. We're not capturing them and tying them up. What we're seeing, what we're observing wasn't valuable enough to even do that.
Right.
And those goats popped in the area. We're just like, shit, that goat's looking right at us. And I'm like, hey, goat, tell your mom, hey, goat, tell your mom I said hello. The Marky Mark thing. Hey, goat, how's your mother? But yeah, it was like, we're out of here, and that night we just booked it out of there. And before anybody could come out of the village and, maybe roll us up or anything. So it's funny too, because one of the other teams did the same thing like a few months later, because we knew that village was dirty. And instead of booking it out of there, they just were like, hey, why don't you bring the QRF up to like right here?
Did it work? Did they?
It worked. Yeah. Like when those dudes came out hunting from that village, like that was, they picked the wrong night. Like that was not,
When you're in a hide, I mean, you can tell us, because this is kind of like when you're in a hide and you're like in stealth mode and maybe gillied out a little bit and doing this and camoed up, and then somebody comes across you and you're looking at each other. It's sort of like your parent walks in while you're watching porn. It's sort of like,
hey,
hey,
what are you doing in there? Nothing. Go away. Gosh. Yeah, that's a real weird feeling, because you're caught and the C word is you're compromised, and that's the dirty word,
Yeah, like it's not like by the enemy where you're just hitting the claymores and the hell
right.
Yeah. The Nam guys had a whole different problem when they were compromised, because it was like 5-alarm fire, like everything was happening. We had all these advantages that they never had. We had the air. I had vehicles that could get to me fast. We had all the apparatus, to be there for you. And there's that safety blanket that comes with that. Mm-hmm. You're never far from the apparatus to come and get you, or, put hate down and fix your problems. That was a debate. The contracting, was weird because you didn't always have that. And that was, you're driving around and you're like, shit, this could be the day, and there's nobody to help. But yeah, it was good. That picture you put online of me and the kid with the Vote for Pedro shirt was one of my. We got up into Kurdistan one week for missions up there, because we knew that there were that on the border, on the Turkish border, they were slipping over and they were trying to cause havoc up in the Kurdish region. So we were doing some missions up there, try to snag people doing that. And, if you guys have been to Kurdistan, or anybody listening, like once you go into Kurdistan proper, like there's usually a checkpoint and there's some Kurds, and they're going to stop your truck, and your 7 and your 6 are going to get out, and they're going to start, the officer in charge of your group and the head enlisted guy are going to come out, and they're going to start talking to the head Kurds, and then they're going to come back to the trucks, and invariably it's always this: all right, boys, take off your helmet and your flak. We're rolling the rest of the way, and guys are like, wait, no. And yes, the Kurds have you. They're taking care of you now. You ditch your helmet, you take off your body armor, and they don't need you walking around in that posture because they've got this. Like the Kurds always had it. And like, if you're walking around in that helmet and body armor posture, then it's like an insult to them. Like you're questioning their ability to take care of you. Their hospitality was that assured. Like that's how legit the Pesh were. And we just stopped, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I'm not saying that when we rolled up the Dahook with 2 MRAPs that they weren't packed to the ceiling with booze on the way back, but that could be true, theoretically. It could have happened.
Hey, man, those, we would do these missions at these border forts, and I'll say it, man, it's outside you can't bust me for it now, man. Well, I had a racket going. A racket. You put me at a border fort for a week and let me do my missions out of there. Don't check the Humvee when I come back in, because I'm sending one of those Iraqi police out with $300 or $400. I'll be like, go into that next village, wherever the fuck it is, and get me all the booze. Bro, have you ever had bourbon made in Syria? You haven't lived until you've had, or Scotch, Jordanian Scotch.
What
you
was
haven't lived.
Do you remember the brand?
White Horse. White Horse.
No, we had
yes.
It was like Chavez. It was like some sort of weird knockoff. It was like drinking turpentine, but but you'll get right,
You'll get right. You'll get right. Oh man, don't, dude. It's funny because it started off with like I was like, fuck it, I got all this I was a contractor first. I knew you can just you ask for people, you ask respectfully in that part of the world, and you show a bunch of money, you'll get whatever it is that you're asking for within reason.
Yeah.
And you tell these guys, look, man, here's $300. I want $300 of the booze. Here's $100. That's yours. Mm-hmm. And that guy comes back with a trunk full, and you're just like, all right, wait till dark. Pull your car up next to that Humvee. And yeah, man, it started off real slow. Like, a hand-picked group of guys in the platoon you'd share a bottle with. And then it was pretty much like everybody had booze. You do a mission for a week and you come back for a week. What do you think is going to go on that week at home?
Yeah.
It's just, there's a reason the EOD team that we were attached to, they changed their call sign to bartender, because we used the EOD camp as like headquarters for any partying that we did. Because if you weren't, EOD had a guy at the gate. It's like, what are you doing here? Nobody can come in here. But I would, and nobody can come looking for us in the EOD camp.
So as that deployment kind of rolled or wound down, you went back to contracting and were on the protection detail for the ambassador, right?
That's correct. Yeah, we came home at the end of 2007. I spent a year just basically I just drank for a whole year. I bartended at a place that I had worked while I was waiting for my contract clearance to come in 2004. And they were nice. They were like, hey man, come back to work. And I was like, all right, but I'm going to drink like every night. And they're like, yeah, that's fine. Just don't screw the money up. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So, but in 2000, at the end of 2008, I was like, I got to get back to work. This sucks. Civilian life isn't great. I'm drinking all the time. So Triple Canopy had taken over BW's contract. I knew a lot of the BW guys. And, because we were back and we would see those guys a lot in 2004 and 2006, and I knew a lot of them, and I was able to secure employment there, and it was a great contract because I think what they did was they grabbed a lot of the guys who had college and they put them on the ambassador's team, and that was really cool because I was the advance for the ambassador for like the next 3 years, and it was an awesome job because I went all over several countries with that man, or two different guys. But like anywhere he needed to go, I was going to, So it was, Ambassador Jeffrey was a fearless individual. He had been an artillery officer in Vietnam, and that dude knew everything. Like he traveled, he had a Glock. I think I'm pretty sure he had his own rifle. I mean, I know that dude wasn't taking chance. He knew everybody's job. Like when I was on the advanced team, I started off as a DDM, and that was a lot of fun. I'm up on the roof. I'm doing my job again. That was interesting. I got hurt, and then they made me the TC. So I'm, now I'm like front seat of the lead vehicle. I'm the guy greeting him when he gets out of the car and taking him to the person he's meeting, so like I'm walking that individual in to see the prime minister of Iraq. Like I'm face to face with those dudes. And let's say there were dignitaries coming in town, congressional delegations come in, you're taking them to places, the vice president of the United States comes in, the president of the United States, you're like, that guy steps out of the vehicle and you're pointing at him and saying, sir, please follow me. And it was pretty interesting for those years, until I had screwed up my back so badly it required surgery, but it was great being there at that level and watching things go on. I was the day that they were negotiating the handover in 2011. I was sitting there, wow, in the corner of the room, just listening to it all. Like, dude, we're doing history today. Today's history. It's happening right now. It was a really interesting job. Yeah.
And you said you messed up your back. You fell through a stairwell or some crazy shit.
Yeah, man. Yeah, dude. We were taking the ambassador to one of the other embassies, and we were on an adjacent building, and I was on the roof, and he was he had a function there. I was coming off the rooftop when he gets back in his vehicle and he's gone, and the advanced team becomes the follow. And so we're folding it up, and I'm coming down this shitty, rickety staircase. Third world, building inspectors don't really follow code. And the staircase just split, and I just went into just fell right through. And there's a part of your back that you think is your spine, but it's kind of not. It's where your hips come together. It's called your sacroiliac joint. And I wrecked it, and I was able to keep it going because, on the camp, there's dudes who were former 18 Deltas. There's guys who were doctors in like big surgery wards in the States. There's real serious medical talent at some of these camps. And I had guys working on me for like a year straight, keeping me upright, but when your leg goes numb, yeah, and you can't carry the weight, that's no longer an injury. Like you're not playing hurt anymore. You're just hurt, and it sucked. I had to have surgery. But yeah, man, I mean, it was better than getting blown up, man. The day that the MOI got blown up, we had postponed our trip to the MOI, and another team had gone instead, and they got nuked, and it was ugly. It was an enormous explosion. And the next day I was there, and it like melted an 18-inch thick concrete wall poured with rebar. It melted this wall. It blew off just outside of it, and all you could see was the rebar. It looked like metal hair sticking up out of the ground. And you're like, dude, everybody in that building was ruined. Like, guys, one dude, it had a detached retina just from the explosion. It was a lot of ugliness that, use your imagination, everybody. It was horrible.
Yeah, they were making the IEDs bigger and bigger and bigger. And
yeah,
there was like semi trucks. Yeah.
Yeah. The first time I saw that, there was Talifar. They blew up the market in maybe the beginning of 2007. I remember it was kind of cold out. 2,500 pounds in the back of a U-Haul. And they just drove it in the middle of the market and sent it. And the crater was like 15 feet deep, And they're like, send Lurson there to check it out. Okay. at 30 miles an hour, looking at the yeah. Big hole, lots of bad stuff. What do you want to do? Well, come on back. Okay, thanks. I'm not sitting around here. Like, it was ugliness. Yeah.
Before we get into the next thing, I'm going to hit you up with some viewer questions. John Pierre says, really cool to see you guys feature a lure guy. On top of that, a core sniper. Sure, he's got stories. Well, he does. Dan Keenan says, John Joey. Andy,
John Chewy. Oh,
you know that?
my man, Dan Cananan. John Chewy. Yes. Okay.
He asks
Thanks,
if
Dan.
he can post links to embarrassing Ryan English picks. I'm okay with it. I have David Maynor. Thank you for your contribution. Really appreciate it.
So generous.
Dan says English, you're using way too many big words. And let's see here. Costanza. Maybe threat actors these days are having to evolve techniques to bypass modern security controls like EDR. What are novel techniques you've seen? I don't even know what the fuck he's talking about to you.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
That's great.
Hit it up.
Well, geez. So, I guess we're going to have the part of the conversation we talk about cybersecurity, huh?
We're gonna. Okay. Let's one more thing before we roll into that. Isaac asks, by any chance were you on Darknet Diaries?
Oh, so I just found out about Darknet Diaries at DEF CON this last year. And that's an interesting thing for me because my friend Wendy Nather, she's kind of, if you were going to look at the Mount Rushmore of cybersecurity, she'd be on it. And she introduced me to some individuals that were like, OG cybersecurity practitioners while we were at this last DEF CON. And somebody told me about Darknet Diaries because one of the things I'd like to do at the organization I work for now is the thing in the Marine Corps that's makes the Marine Corps really good with very little money and not a lot of people is the esprit de corps. And what that really means is that every Marine literally gets pounded into his or her skull the history of any great thing that any great Marine did in any battle anywhere, right? Even if it wasn't bad, like just awesome achievements, you must memorize them. So I kind of think that would be really important for the cybersecurity field. And like but it turns out like I'm not the first guy to have this idea. So Darknet Diaries it's a podcast where somebody has taken the time to really go in deep on like famous and not so famous attacks and defenses. When you talk about the individual asked about bypassing endpoint detection, EDR stuff, it's like the evolution of that came from like somebody sidestepping your perimeter in a certain way, and maybe the organization that either got compromised by that or defeated that, maybe some of those individuals are willing to discuss it, right? And so Darknet Diaries, that guy goes out and finds he's well connected enough, or she. I haven't started really getting in depth, but if you want to, that's where to go. They're finding those individuals who were there that day, and they're getting them to talk about what it was that happened. Maybe they attacked something successfully, maybe they defended it. But this is good stuff because it's going to give you the background for what we do today. And there's another individual, his name is actually Jack Daniel, and that's his real name. And he is like the grand old man of the Marine Corps. He's the grand old man of cybersecurity, apparently. He's a really interesting person, very nice guy. He'll make time if you meet him out of the blue. One of those individuals that doesn't have a lot of pretense, but apparently rumor is that he's kind of culling together an authoritative history of things like this also.
That's very cool.
For the next generation. Yeah. I coming into cybersecurity late in my life, my first boss and my first two bosses were like, yeah, you don't know anything, so we're going to teach you everything you need to know. Just be quiet and listen. And here's some books. And like one of them was a really cool book called Owning the Network or Hacking. I got it over there in my bookshelf. But it was a fictionalized version of like really cool things that actually happened, and somebody just fictionalized them to make them more readable. And it gives you the idea of like what's possible. Like this guy did this amazing thing with a dial-up phone, and then that girl did this amazing thing by going out to the the green tree at the end of your block and like hacking phone numbers and making long distance calls, and all these things still have a parallel to what you do today. So, just like saying that Dan Daly took it to the Germans at Belleau Wood and used a bolt action rifle, but you don't have, you're using this advanced state of the art stuff, but you still have to do that stuff. You still got to go into you still got to get in the wadi and clear that, the same way somebody else did. Those dudes who took Riva Ridge, did it so unconventionally. They climbed an area the Germans thought were unclimbable. That's cybersecurity too. Like I've got to enumerate everything about your defense, and I've got to know enough to see where you think that nobody's going to get in here, and that's the spot I'm going to try very stealthily first to acquire a foothold in your network. And it's that mindset, that spirit of look, he doesn't see him, he doesn't think I'm coming there, so I'm going there. I'm not going in the front door. Yeah.
Ryan, what was your entry into this field?
When I was home getting surgery on my back, it was in 2012, and I met a dude named David Maynor. He's one of the guys that just asked one of those questions, and he, I had actually met him a few years before while I was home on leave, and I didn't know anything about it. Like, I didn't really know what he did or anything. And then so we were going to the range and shooting. He's like, "Hey man, I want to pick up some, pretty good rifle skills. I'd like you to teach me." And another buddy of mine was working with him to make him a really good pistol shooter. So one day, he keeps quizzing me on stuff that I was doing downrange. Like, well, how do you do this at work? And what do you do then? And then, well, how does that work? And tell me about that. And I'm like, well, it's not like everything I do is like top secret. So I'm telling him the framework of what it's like to protect a human being in a high threat environment and make him safe from a known safe built up location, transit him to a place that is also assumed to be known and safe, through an area that we do know for a fact is horribly unsafe, right? And I'm explaining this to him, and then one day he says, "Well, how'd you like another job?" I'm doing what? He's like, "What do you know about cybersecurity?" And I'm like, "Dude, I can change my password every 90 days, as per the State Department. Like, that's what I know about cybersecurity. I know that it's got to be a lot of letters and numbers and stupid things I'm going to forget. And I'm going to, He's like, "No, that's not cybersecurity. I'll teach you cybersecurity. I need a project manager. I need somebody who can, handle the jobs that we have and deal with customers and stuff and keep us on track." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't know anything about cybersecurity. I think we've established that." And he's like, "You're going to work for me and Robert Graham. You're going to learn everything you need to know. Trust me." And I'm like, "Okay." And, sometimes some people approach you and they tell you like, "Dude, I'm the guy. I know what needs to be known. I know the places that need to be gone to, and I know the people there, and I will get you in." And every now and then, you remember when you were in the Army, guys, "Oh yeah, bro, I know everybody at that club, man. I'll get us in the front door." You go there and you're like, the line's 40 people deep and he doesn't know anybody there. There's those guys. And then sometimes you meet somebody who he's like, "Yeah, I know everybody in Bakersfield. We're going to meet all the chicks." And you go to Bakersfield and you meet all the chicks, and that was David. And he was teaching me things that I thought were like science fiction and really impressive stuff. But he and Robert Graham were just low key individuals that knew it all and didn't make you feel like shit for not knowing anything. And that's how you want to be coming into an environment like that. You want to learn from those types of guys. So I did, and it was amazing, right? It was life-changing because I knew I wasn't going to be going back to work anytime soon because the rehab process was so bad. Next thing I know, I'm doing something probably cooler than carrying a rifle for money.
So a mutual friend wants me to ask you about Chris Costa.
There's you're not supposed to say anything about people that might make them seem you're not supposed to put people in an unfavorable light if they're not around. But I will say this: Chris Costa knows a lot of stuff. And one day we were at Chris Costa's camp, and he was teaching something he didn't know anything about, and he admitted it. And he still charged everybody full price to be there. But he was gracious about it. He's like, "I don't know anything about this shit, so we're going to just do it live." And it was a precision rifle with ARs, and he wasn't used to heavy ARs. It's not the kind of shooter that he was growing up and stuff. So it turns out though that one of his other instructors was one of my unit section leaders at Triple Canopy. This dude named Stoney, great guy, hates everybody. And like, I see Stoney sitting over in the corner and after the introductions were over, like, hey, Stoney, what's up, man? It's me, English. She's like, the fuck are you doing here, dude? And I'm like, my boss said that we're going to take this class. And it's like, I'm at work. I do cybersecurity now. He's like, we're going and you're going and look, I'll pay for you to go. I just want to go. And then we're not working that week and you're not working that week. So you're coming with me. So I'm like, oh God, Chris Costa is a unique individual. So to have the stones to put on a class, long distance shooting with an AR with 308s and above, and not have ever done it in your life. There's a lot of stones in putting that class on, right? So yeah, we had a good time that week. And that's where Janjaweed came from, because we're driving around in trucks, just totally ignoramuses running around Florida.
The same friend, and I don't know what this is a reference to, but he wants me to ask you about the fake penis.
It's a good thing that we don't. Yeah. So the fake penis, fake penises, otherwise known as dildos.
Want to know.
All right. So there was a phallic device, sexual device, that had made its way throughout several deployments and was usually used to implant into somebody's gear when they were getting ready to fly home. So you would do your best to put this dildo into somebody's gear without them knowing it before they went through customs or before, you redeployed home, so that when the gear was inspected, in one case, it was duct taped into a rifle case. So when the case was opened, this thing stood straight up. And I managed to, I had custody of said object. I was the maintainer of said object. And yes, a certain individual found theirself on the receiving end of this object at that camp. So yeah, I don't think Chris Costa knew about that one.
There's another question. Tell us the story, and thank you, Dan. Tell us the story about when your team lead punched a monkey.
Okay. Philippines, 1992, my first trip anywhere outside the United States of America. I'm in Staple Platoon, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, and we get sent down to the Philippines because the United States is going to close down the nuke base where the subs were running into and out of, right? We're leaving, our military presence in the Philippines was at an end. And they were concerned that the insurgents would try to get real crafty towards the end of the time that America was going to spend there and catch us sleeping and get on the nuke base and do something stupid. So snipers and a detachment of recon and I believe some first group dudes were it was first group obviously, but we're all down there doing missions and stuff. And so it was cool. You'd go out and do, whatever stuff, sneaking around, try to catch guys. A lot of good learning was had, but in the daylight hours, me being a very boot ass Marine, like just shower shoe material, me and the other two shower shoes were in charge of taking the garbage to the dumpster on a regular basis. The dumpster on that camp was an old Navy camp, and we were living in these big Quonset huts, and the dumpster was centrally located, and it was right at the edge of this jungle. And in the jungle are all kinds of animals, and among those animals are these really, really like these pretty decent, like maybe about 3 foot tall monkeys with big, big teeth. And I can't remember what kind of monkeys they were, but there's a cool video of some Marines not long ago. I think they were in Korea actually, and they're coming up on these two monkeys like having sex on top of a shed, and these devil dogs are getting up closer, and then the monkey turns around and sees them and like rips ass after him. You see these dudes squealing and running away, right? Well, every morning that the trash needed to be taken out, either me or my buddy O'Rear or my other buddy Jenkinson were going to be taking that trash out, and getting the trash past the monkeys and into the dumpster was a test of courage, because the monkeys were in the dumpster every day looking for food, and they were not, this was their territory, right? They peed on it, that was theirs, and they weren't trying to share it. Even though you were bringing more shit to the party, they didn't want it. They would chase you and chase. And so we started thinking of things like, all right, we got to kill these monkeys. That's what we're going to do. So we go out into the Ville, and we're buying shit like fucking homemade bow and arrows and like blowguns. And we're sitting around practicing, like trying to get good with blowguns. Finally, my buddy O'Rear, so the main monkey was the dude, we had dubbed him Kong, obviously. He was the king of all the monkeys in this band, and he was evil. Kong was he wasn't going to.
The predominant
He was
male.
Kong, the dominant male. He was everything you could imagine about dominant, just feral, everything, horrible, big teeth, tear you apart. And he shot Kong in the, so we got a ham slice. Remember when ham slice was the worst MRE?
Mhm.
A slice of ham.
Gel, yeah.
Yeah, it was horrifying. So we took a ham slice, opened it. We managed to get it down there one night when the monkeys weren't there, and basically put our bait out. And then the next morning, Kong is sitting there eating the ham slice, and me and O'Rear, I'm spotter, and he's like the shooter. I'm like, all right, dude, okay, it's a dart gun, right? So he fucking hits Kong in the dead in the center of his chest with his blow dart. Boom, sticks him in the chest. Kong screams, ah! And he drops the ham slice, and he's trying to get this thing out of his chest. He's not dead. He's just mad. So he can't get it out of his chest, grabs the ham slice, disappears into the jungle. We take the garbage, throw it in the dumpster. Big victory, right? We're so happy. Next day, Kong's there. No dart in his chest, though. And he's mad about it. So he chases us the fuck off that pile of garbage. We're like, dude. So, and then Tim Parker's, the chief scout's like, what in the fuck are you dudes doing? Like running out, like screaming like children. He was not the one to disappoint. So he's like, listen, you tell me you don't have the balls to go down there and throw the garbage away. It's just a bunch of monkeys. We're like, you go, you don't want to say this to the
right.
the head, the senior enlisted guy, and you don't tell him that you go do it, but it was like, you go do it. I'm not going down there, man. I'm not going down there. It's too hot. It's too hot. LZ's too hot. So he's like, okay, all right. Tim wasn't a large guy. He's not a large man, but so he goes down there and he gets the monkey to chase him, and he rounds this corner of a Quonset hut building, and he stops and he waits. Monkey comes around the corner, and Tim's got his weight back on his foot, and that monkey leaps into the air, gonna sink his claw, and Tim just one times that monkey right in the face. Stops him cold, dead nuts, stops him cold. And the monkey shakes his head and looks at us and just, all right, man, walks away. And we were able to throw the garbage away successfully after that. It was all right, well, now that we've broken the seal on this, we cracked the code.
Yeah.
Just violence is the code.
We've
but
shown
hand
who the
to
biggest
hand,
mammal
yeah.
is.
Show who the biggest mammal
site.
is.
Yeah. Prison rules.
Prison rules, man.
Yeah.
And that's I learned a tough lesson that day. You want to take the trash out, sometimes you get your hands dirty, So yeah, the Philippines was a really interesting place for me because I learned a bunch of different things. And my last lesson in the Philippines was, drinking out in the village was a pretty nice endeavor. And everybody was using a fake name, and nobody told the boots to use a fake name. So the first weekend we were allowed out. I get to this bar where all the senior dudes are drinking, and one of them had said, hey man, just call me Jake when we're out in town. Don't call me by my name. And I was like, all right, whatever. Nobody said, oh, by the way, you guys need to have fake names too. It was just like, oh, okay, whatever. And I come walking to this bar, and this bartender's like, I'm like, can I have a beer? My buddies are all sitting there. She's like, what your name? And I go, oh, my name's Ryan. And she goes, what your real name is? And I'm like, my name's Ryan. She goes, what your last name is? And I go, Ryan English. She's like, you have your ID? And I go, yeah. She goes, you give it to me. And I give it to her. And she reads it, and she goes, okay. That was my girlfriend for the next 4 months. My buddy Walters, he had been putting the moves on, he's just doing his suave everything over the last week, and furious. He's like, dude, I've been working on this for a week. You come in here with your stupid real name. And I'm like, I didn't know, I didn't know any better. I have a great picture of us in a Longapo, man. I used to have to wear glasses, and it's hilarious. So like the girl just saw me for like a sap, and she's like, whatever. But it was the best 4 months of my life, man. It was awesome. Like she took me home every night that we weren't in the field.
Scott asks, are the pen testers from a civilian background very different from you? How do you learn all the computer stuff, and would you learn it differently if you could?
Would I learn it differently if I could? Yes and no, because so are the civilian pen testers different? Not necessarily. No, they wouldn't necessarily be any different at all. The rules, the things you need to learn, the way you have to digest the information is all the same, and the information doesn't change. And when you're looking at networks, those are the same. So it's not any different. The only difference might be whether or not somebody came into the field with that hacker mindset or that security mindset, that maybe guys coming out of the mill, whatever they did in the mill, that order and that structure that they were used to might be a helpful thing to them. But coming into cybersecurity from a civilian background, you could be the best. Most of the people in cybersecurity came from a civilian background. And if you think about like the people who have been doing it for the longest, most, if not like a significant percentage of them, are all people with civilian backgrounds. They just are many of them are self-taught. They're all very smart, and they all have, that curiosity. So really, if there's one thing that you probably need more than anything else is the curiosity, right? Because you run up against something that you can't understand, and you're like, well, you know how in the mill we have self-aid, first aid, buddy aid. They keep harping on that.
Mhm.
But the thing about self-aid, first aid, buddy aid, what it means is if you're injured in the middle of, let's say, a firefight or something, you try to attend to your injury as best you can, and let's say stop the blood or do whatever you got to do. You've got your individual first aid kit. You maybe throw your pressure bandage on, your tourniquet, and you get back into the fight.
Mhm.
If you can't handle the injury, you'll ask. Hopefully you're still conscious, maybe, but then you'd ask for a medic, and that guy comes out of what he's doing in the fight and comes and helps you out. But you want to attend to your own self-work. But before you ever got to the point where you could do self-aid, somebody had to teach you what was in the bag,
Right.
how to apply the things in the bag, right? So you had to be taught. So everybody needs to be learned up a little bit, but then it's the curiosity of well, this pressure dressing could work here or here, but what if I use something else? Or was this going to be good enough? So in cybersecurity, it's like, you could go bother your friend for the answer to this networking problem that you're having, or you could just, all right, man, I'll go buy this book, or I'll get on Google and Google the living shit out of this thing. Even the guys that I first learned from, who have been doing this for like 30 years, one of them the other day was on Twitter like, hey, I checked Google and I went to the ends of the internet trying to find the answer to this network problem, but I couldn't find it. Does anybody know how best to iterate or how best to integrate this particular wireless setup that I want to do in a Linux environment where there's not like a good, platform already handy? And then the answers come in.
Right.
But that individual probably spent hours looking for the answer before they asked for other people's help. And that's an important thing to learn. I think, yeah, go ahead.
I was just curious, you having been in the Marine Corps, which is a lot of esprit de corps, and it's and miscreants, and then the snipers, which is even a level above that when it comes to, I don't want to say degeneracy, more like
It is.
or malfeasance, but just more like sort of the brigand mentality, right?
Yeah.
Did you? One of the things that's hard for vets when they transition is to sort of find that camaraderie and that same type of mission-driven, that mission drive. Did you find that in the cybersecurity hacker community?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. The community, it's not like the community, it's not like people get to know each other in, they started off in chat rooms and forums, exchanging tips and things, getting to know each other that way. You would know an individual and never have met him. You corresponding with people and never have met them. Like there's a Slack channel that I'm in where like the people who post the most important stuff and helpful stuff I've never met, but I met a few of them I have, but like I've never met him. And then one day you're at a conference and somebody's like, hey, that's Stick. You go introduce yourself to him right now. And this is a guy whose name you've seen like 400 times, and that dude's like out there crusading to stop, the evil in the world. So then you start thinking about the bigger fight, right? And so one of the things that we all miss when we get out is that sense that I'm a purposeful being, like I'm doing something for the greater good. Because I think that almost everybody who enlisted at one point probably thought, I'm going to do something for the greater good. I'm going to risk all this for the love of country or whatever, and you have that somewhere until you hate the Corps and you hate the Army and you get out. But you still started off wanting to be on you want to wear that white hat, that you want to be the good guy. But the thing about the hacker community is like everybody thinks traditionally the word hacker is associated with bad guys, but hackers are doing the most good. And hackers aren't really it's not like hackers are doing the most good. It's individuals trying to find flaws in programs and applications and in systems and networks, and then turn that information over to the people who made them or the people who are using them, like the company you work for, let's say. And those are people with that cowboy mentality that helps them find flaws. And then they're saying, hey, look, I found this. You need to know about this. This is going to make you safer. And that's a sense of purpose that guys in our old line of work can identify with. You wake up, you go to work, you start looking for problems to be solved, and you turn them over to the people for the greater good. And even if you're just helping your team and your organization be safer, you have a purpose. You're doing something every morning. At the end of the day, you did research, or you patched something the right way, or there's so many ways that you could contribute in this field, and just being able to contribute every day. That's what guys like us wake up for.
Right.
When you don't have that, that's when the depression sets in, and that's when that horrible feeling starts to creep up.
Right. And they're in so much in the cybersecurity world.
Yeah.
It's the same lingo as the military.
A lot of it,
right? The FDAD, the Intel cycle, and then you have your red teams like you're talking about, which are essentially the Op4. So it's a really fascinating, like overlay between military and really this new battle domain.
It is. Space. Yeah. Like network defenders, like blue teamers, red teamers, attackers of network, like it's a team environment. Like you're delegating tasks to other guys based on their strengths, and you got somebody trying to do social engineering over here. You got somebody trying to look at packets coming over the network there, and somebody's doing something in the wireless spectrum here, and then you're over here trying to map out somebody else's whole network environment, and then you guys come together and it's just like a recon team would do. It's amazing. The parallels are incredible. And then there is a lot of camaraderie, and you guys got a chance to see that when you went to DEF CON.
Yeah.
And it's like homecoming every year for people in the industry that maybe only see each other once a year, but they're talking to each other every other day. And then you get there, and it's like the sense of like togetherness, and it's a unique feeling when you go to one of these conferences and you see people that, oh, bro, I've been watching your blog for 6 years, dude. I'm so happy to meet you. Helped me out. You didn't know this, bro, but you helped me out with this problem that I had. I read your blog and I was able to successfully do this thing. And that guy's, oh, come on, really? It's like, oh yeah, man. And then now everybody's like, you just met a friend for life.
Yeah.
Now, that happens in the Corps. It's like, hey man, your team was on this deployment and we went to go do this thing, and then you guys were in the adjacent thing, and I heard you on the radio doing this. You're really cool on the radio, bro. You kept your shit together. I'm really impressed. And you meet this guy somewhere years later. It's just like that. So, it's a lot of fun. Right. And then you mentioned, yeah, go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
Well, I want you to tell us, what you're up to today, where you're working in this field, who you're working for. What have you been up to recently?
So I had worked in, a couple different jobs, and I kind of went back to doing executive protection for a little while. And then once again, Dave Maynard calls me up and he says, look, I've been hired by this company called Cybrary. And I was like, oh yeah, I've heard of Cybrary. They're an instructional platform. They provide like nuts and bolts knowledge of the cybersecurity world, from like beginner all the way to like highly organized teams that want to come in and then learn in an environment that their organization is specific to, right? And they can take you from zero to a career path, and you can learn on this platform any and everything that has to do with cybersecurity, from what is networking to what is this programming language all about, and why do I need it? And the opportunity was there to come on board here and have an intelligence cell that will use modern, Dave is out hunting for things that nobody else can really find, and we're sharing information with other organizations. And then we turn that into training labs where somebody, usually at this point, when you're looking at one of these labs, you've already got a pretty good knowledge and you're working somewhere, and you can watch step by step on how to mitigate this problem that's very new and it's causing havoc in this area. So you could read about it, or you could watch one of these labs, and somebody is basically going to go step by step in this environment that you can recreate on your machine, and then now you have a detailed understanding of how to mitigate that problem, protect whatever it is that you got to protect. Cyber has been around since 2015, and the company has evolved a lot over the last several years, and they're kind of changing ever more. And the threat intelligence cell that I'm part of is going to be a major part of that. There are not a lot of training companies actually do their own intel and create their own stuff, so it's kind of a big deal. And I'm really proud to be part of it. Teaching people stuff is, once you've done a few things and you kind of want to teach it, it's pretty exciting. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
it's awesome.
And it's not very stressful either, because if you're doing a penetration test and you're trying to get into somebody's stuff, it's stressful.
Yeah.
And or you're protecting somebody's stuff. It's stressful, man. I would not want to be the chief information security officer of a big organization.
Yeah.
That's hard work. I don't know how those people go to sleep at night. But this is a really good place, man. I kind of feel like I'm in a training cell back in the Corps or something, Now,
in this cybersecurity world, I'm sorry, do people ever have to hold you back because you were a sniper and you were alert and you're like, oh well, let's just fucking attack these guys. We know how to attack them. Let's just like bring their system down. And like, no, like Ryan, like
one of the first things I learned was, it's funny because you talk about snipers being like renegade mentality, anything goes as long as I win.
Yeah.
The most important thing that I learned early on was ethics matter here.
Uh-huh.
And if you're, you got a buddy who comes up, he's like, listen, dude, I want, I'm not sure what my girlfriend's up to, but can you get into her email? Cause I want, and you're like, you know what? I cannot do that, bro. I cannot do that for you. People might ask for you to do these things. And even if you're capable of it, if you want a career in this field, you just don't do that, because this is, your name is all that you have here. And if you start screwing around like that and doing those things, you're not going to get hired by somebody down the road if you've got this attached to your name. So yeah, man, and there are people who do this. They're just not good guys.
Yeah.
I'm not a bad guy. I mean, say what you want about like wanting to go down range a lot and do those things. Like I did those things for the people that were with me and my friends. And
right.
I did that, I'm not trying to do messed up shit in this field,
Right.
Unless of course,
I just emailed you some links. If you could pull them up on the work computer here, on the Zoom computer. Somebody who is friends or maybe enemies of Ryan has some pictures that he wanted to share with the live stream. And so I'm gonna have Dee pull them up.
Oh man, I got a feeling there's gonna be some body.
I'm trying not to show.
No. There's no. I pre-screened. There's no body parts. There's nothing that's gonna get us banned.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Okay. Well, sometimes there's,
Give us some commentary on this.
yeah, I want to say that was at that might have been at the Chris Costa shooting and drinking extravaganza in Florida back in 2014. Possibly.
My understanding, my source says 2012, but continue.
2012 then. Okay. Yeah.
Continue.
Well, you guys are the journalists. I trust you to find those, and you've vetted those sources, I'm sure.
That's thoroughly rigorous vetting. I totally did not receive these links 30 seconds ago.
No, I wouldn't imagine that you would post something up.
Yeah,
like that,
yeah, of course. That'd just be inappropriate and wrong. And what's going on here?
So
D,
listen, here's the thing.
Scroll down, D. What is with? They wouldn't even let you show that on television in the 1950s.
Yeah. Gentlemen, listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't understand, flexibility is a major part of good shooting. And in fact, I'm a regular yoga practitioner because flexibility is, positional shooting is dependent on flexibility. So I like to warm up a little bit before I do a course of shooting. Sometimes I do some hip stretch, in that case there.
It's very provocative.
It could, Jack, that's, snipers worldwide agree, it's the physical form is usually very attractive, it helps you identify targets in environments.
Or draw them in this case, perhaps.
Or draw them in this case. That's correct.
Okay.
I haven't seen that picture in a long time.
Last two questions. Isaac asks, Dear Mr. Ryan, very formal. I'm in my second year of university going for a computer information systems bachelor's. I plan to get my master's in cybersecurity or ethical hacking. Most of what I know from self-study, but recently I had to drop the minor for cybersecurity because of money, and I found I put more time in the bachelor's, but did I make a mistake in dropping it, or should I stay the course and just keep self-studying?
No, keep self-studying. The most important, I don't know, everybody's going to have an opinion on this, but if you don't need to sit in a classroom to learn this stuff, to be really good at it. And there's a lot of different books out there that will bring you up to speed on things. But if you were going to learn, obviously the first thing you want to understand is networking, right? And then the next thing you probably want to start looking at, trying to figure out is like how to look at packets and see what's in them. You don't need school for that. You need Wireshark for that. You can teach yourself those things. There's a book. Let me see if I can bring it up here. There's a book that David Maynard just showed me, and if you're listening, David Maynard, my address. I believe that book should be Amazoned over here, most Ricky Tick, because you keep talking about it. But one of the things he said was this: there's a book called Dive into Systems, A Gentle Introduction to Computer Systems.
Ooh, that sounds nice. Gentle.
Yeah, the authors are Suzanne Matthews, Tia Newhall, and Kevin Webb, for those who are keeping score at home. When you look at the table of contents here, some of it might seem pretty advanced, but, to hear somebody who's, my boss has been in this game for, he doesn't like to say the number of years, but let's say it's more than 20. And his quote was, if you have this book and you did a chapter a week, after 17 weeks, you know as much as a computer science major. Like you're that good. Like this is that good of a book, and it's not over the top difficult. That book combined with, a good understanding of networking, how to look into packets, and then understanding the tools that you're going to use to see how to get into networks. Things like Metasploit is still popular, but everybody uses these frameworks like Cobalt Strike, and even those are going to merge into other things. You don't need to know that. You don't really need to know that. You just have to understand these basic fundamental things. And a book like that seems to me like it's a great starting point. But then there's Linux Basics for Hackers, No Starch Press.
Yeah.
Great book, right? Hold on, man. I have that book. Look.
Yeah, that's not going to work, bro.
No, here we go.
Oh, there you go.
Linux Basics for Hackers. go get that book. It's not cheap, but it's not horribly expensive.
Well, actually, for No Starch, don't they do a lot of specials on Humble Bundle? Doesn't No Starch, or maybe
I believe it's right.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Yeah, Humble Bundle's it wasn't No Starch that does it. It's
Packed, I guess.
Yeah. But the answer to your question was, was I making a mistake dropping that class? No, I think that you'll find that a significant number of the people in this industry, especially the ones who have been around a long time, are self-taught, or they went to a lot of courses that they paid money for and went to a lot of conventions and paid attention to different things that are being taught, followed people's blogs, getting out there and reading what experienced people are writing. I mean, every day that I wake up, I read several different threat intel blogs, like I'm reading the newspaper, just to see what's been going on. Not every day, each blog's not updated, but I keep checking the same bunch of them. And, I want to see what these guys are putting out there. And then when you read how an attack happened and they give you the nuts and bolts of it, then you start really understanding the scope of how something happened. And you read it enough times and you start making those connections in your mind. School's great. School's a great thing. I went to college, but I didn't think I was going to use it, and I don't. But computer science degree is awesome. Problem is, a lot of jobs want you to have one, and you could spend all that money and time a lot more effectively going to courses that really, there's a lot more out there than what's in that university, and you don't have to go in debt for it.
Last question. Isaac says,
Yes.
I'm 29 years old and I feel like the clock is ticking faster because I want to become a federal agent and do offensive hacking operations for CIA, DIA, or NSA, or FBI. What steps should I be doing to increase my chances of getting accepted into these agencies?
Oh, I think we could answer that one as a group, huh, boys? You want to start working for those agencies. First thing you want to be asking yourself is is there anything in my background that might be adversarial to me getting a security clearance? You're not working for any of those agencies doing anything like that if you have a problem getting a security clearance. So you want to make sure that your past is unimpeachable as much as you can. Having said that, it seems to me, and some of the people listening out there could correct me, but in my experience so far, a lot of the federal jobs, there's people who go to work for, they go to Fort Meade, or they start working at Langley, and they're picked right out of college. That's true. That happens a good bit. And then there's people who start off in the industry and they get a lot of certificates, and that even, the guys I know who have been like police officers who've gotten in cybersecurity and now are working federal, it's only because they went and got all those certs. The certificates don't always matter in like the civilian world of cybersecurity. They're good. They're great knowledge. They're good to have. But in the years ago, they didn't matter at all. And more they matter. So if you were going to go, you start off, you get certified ethical hacker, and then you go get CISSP, and then you get more certificates. Some of the certificates require you to have been in the industry for a certain amount of time before you can take the test. It's like a vetting process that doesn't always make sense. Like you have had your apprenticeship, now you can go get your plumber's, thing. I don't know. But some of them you can't get for a while, but the entry level ones you can get on your own. And, we have those courses. I want to plug my company, sure, but we have really good courses for CISSP at Cybrary where, you'll go through 15 hours of instruction, another 20 hours of labs, and you get another 3-hour, how to take this test course. And you could get that certificate in, and I'm not saying it's going to take you 60 hours to get it, because it's going to be a lot to actually break it down and learn it. And you wouldn't want to come in off the street and do that. But this is how you start. If you're nowhere and you're trying to come in this industry, you're going to want to get some certificates.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to get lucky. I got lucky by getting to go to work for somebody who was established and could teach me things. That's not going to happen for everybody. The other thing is, a lot of guys get into this industry because they got a job on the help desk, and they just sat and people were calling in, and you're just going down the list of, well, not necessarily Geek Squad, but you find these companies that are willing to hire you on a help desk and give you an orientation, and then you're getting phone calls and you're starting to think, and react, and then you're starting to like look into the, you in real time fixing problems for people. That's another good place to start. But for the individual who has that question, yeah, I hope you do end up in those places doing those things, because we need the next generation of people to want to go and be there. The fight that the guys on the, me, Dave, and Jack had is more kinetic and less, less. The digital evolution was going on abreast of that, and now we're in an environment where the digital war is going to take precedence over the kinetic war sometime very soon. You'll be knocking the drones out of the sky that are trying to drop little handmade grenades into your buddy's tank.
Yeah,
that's what's happening now. You want to learn something? Learn about RF hacking. Like, learn the wireless spectrum. Learn how to dominate the wireless spectrum. There's companies like Hack5, HAK5, Hack5. Like, they make gear that top of the line gear for you to start learning how to get into the wireless spectrum, and they're willing to share that knowledge. Hopefully they'll be working with us trying to make modules, like trainable stuff. But these are people, they're out there. They have gear. You can learn how to use it. Next thing you know, you're picking off wireless signals, and hopefully you're not getting in your neighbor's Wi-Fi or their Bluetooth. But like, that's where the war is going to be in the next 20 years. You think we're fighting China? You better learn how to knock 300 suicide drones out of the sky before they smash into the Belleau Wood 50 miles away from Taiwan. And you're going to be the guy that you have to do. You're that guy now. I'm not that guy. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Like, we'll be old, and I can't, but
you can see the screen.
Yeah, exactly. Look, man, don't think I don't have those. Like, every now and then at the end of a long day, I'm like, oh God, blue blockers.
We have one more comment. It's from Garrett Kennanen. Garrett, Sir Generous. He says, "I wasn't there, but hi from John Dewey Jr."
Hey, Garrett. Yeah, there's another individual who's kind of worked his way into a pretty good job, and Garrett's it's funny. Like, there's a lot of people you'll meet in this field have a lot of really like native intelligence, and they just. It's probably the most important thing that you can have is that curiosity and native intelligence. And Garrett is one of those guys. He definitely has that. But you can be anybody. That's the thing. You can come from any background and come here. I had somebody tell me a long time ago that like one of the best backgrounds for cybersecurity, library science. And then I started meeting people at these conferences like, yeah, I went to school for library science. I'm like, it's true. Like, it's in library science, you think it's like a librarian sitting there with those glasses telling you about the Dewey Decimal System. No, it's about how to research. Mm-hmm. Like, library scientists, that's an actual degree, and it's about information. How to categorize information, how to do research. It's stunning the number of people you'll meet in this industry who have unbelievably disparate backgrounds. Like, I really hope that veterans are listening to this conversation tonight and want to get involved in this, because I think that guys from our old line of work have a really good mindset that fits in here. You just need to be told that the tools are different. When you take a break on a patrol, what's the first thing you do? You set the 240 in, right? Why? It's the most casualty producing weapon, right? So somebody simply tells you, okay, well, when you're setting up a network, what's the equivalent to the most the most protective weapon is the first thing I want to set in, and the order in which you do things, you just need to be told that this is a different thing. This way that you do mapping of a network is like a set of binoculars. Use your binos.
It's like a range sketch, right?
Like a range card.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then learn how to do it so that the glare doesn't reflect and give your position away.
Right. This is when you said what's the first thing you do when you stop on a patrol, I thought rucksack flop. So I'll call it.
Rucksack too heavy.
Guys, thank you for everyone out there for joining us tonight. Next week, we're going to have Amy Forsyth on the show, who was with the cultural support teams, amongst other things she did. Really excited to have her on the show. And otherwise, thank you for joining us. Ryan, do you have any final thoughts, any final wisdom now that we've thoroughly embarrassed you with these candid photographs? Anything you want to throw out there or plug before we get going?
those weren't super thoroughly embarrassing. No, I really, I do want to thank Cyber, my employer, for letting me come on and run amok with you guys for a couple hours and, swear and drink booze. But, I wanted to really tell people, like, we need people to get in this industry really bad. And it's like 2005 or 2006 when I re-enlisted, they were like, "Hey, what's that scar on your back?" And that was from my first back surgery. And I'm like, "It's nothing." And they were like, "Cool, you're in." This is something that, they just needed bodies so bad. We need people in cybersecurity that bad. And, I didn't get into cybersecurity till I was like 37 years old or something like that, 38. Dave, when was the first time you got switched on, right? Like
Day 1. I mean, a year ago, right? So here, Ryan, I have a question, because if we are talking to veterans, or even people who aren't veterans, but
right, yeah,
particularly veterans, and you're saying that there's a need for their skills in cybersecurity, and a veteran like me comes out and goes, "I don't know anything about computers. Like, I know how to turn one on, or whatever. I don't want to go to college for it. I don't have $17,000 for a boot camp." What would when it seems like there's such this vast gap between, a veteran, having these hard skills or soft skills or whatever else, and then getting into cybersecurity, like, what would be the first steps for somebody looking to do that wasn't a big investment?
If the VA will give you money for school. So if you qualify for that, you want to use that if you can. But you know what? I have been talking to a lot of veterans lately that the classroom environment is actually really good for a lot of veterans, right? At first, you learned everything you learned in a classroom before you went on. Hey, here's how the Claymore works. Where'd you learn that? Under a roof somewhere in a classroom with an instructor. So that's beneficial. I would even say, look, man, I wouldn't go to a big university. I'd rather go to a technical school. I'd rather go over to DeKalb Tech right over here in Atlanta and take those entry-level courses. While I'm taking those courses, if the VA is going to give me money, I'm taking those courses and I'm nerding out on these other books, or I'm getting a subscription to a training platform like ours and taking everything else that I can in parallel. And yeah, you do benefit from having somebody slowly, patiently explain to you why this works, that works. I do. I like going to,
something I'll throw out there that I've talked to these people in the past, and maybe a good place for some people to start. There's an organization called Code Platoon out of Chicago, and they offer a lot of free classes to veterans that are like paid for. There's scholarships, there's all kinds of stuff like that. And like, you can go and apply right now. You can take in-person or remote classes. I don't have any affiliation with Code Platoon. I'm just saying, like, I've run across them in the past, and that might be that's probably a pretty invaluable resource for a lot of veterans out there.
I was hoping that sometime during this conversation tonight, something like that would come out. Something like that would pop up. Either somebody would call in or one of you guys would say that. That's really cool. Yeah, I would definitely get that, because having somebody guide you through just how to code helps a lot. Yeah.
And so for Cyber, because you guys have all these classes that have virtual labs that you can actually do them. So it's not just like reading a book and going, "Oh, I'm not sure if I understand this." That your labs walk them through it. And there are actually career paths that people can follow that can take all these classes, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Or it'll basically give them the way to go. And that is cybrary.it, cybrary.it. If you guys are interested in this field, like check out, like, get on their platform and do a class or two and see what you think.
Yeah, there's a lot of free, you could buy a subscription, or you can take a lot of the free classes. They used to be a significant amount of free classes, but some of them are advanced enough to where you have to be paying for it. But yeah, there's a lot of free stuff that you're going to be able to access here on this platform, and you will learn a lot just on the free stuff alone. Yeah, and a lot of platforms do that. Yeah, that's not uncommon in the cybersecurity field.
Those platforms aren't near as good as yours. I
like to think so.
Yeah, we're plugging your company right now. So
thanks, buddy.
Yeah,
appreciate it. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
Are all right.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Thank you, Ryan, and thanks, Dave, for joining us, and Dee for producing. And we'll see all you guys next Friday with Amy Forsyth. So until then, have a nice weekend, everyone.
Cheers.
Cheers.